This is Just a Few Questions. I'm Marc Sims. My guest is Dominique McKoy. He is the executive director of the University of Chicago's To&Through project at the Crown Family School of Social Work, Policy, and Practice. Did I get that right, Professor?
You got it right.
I
It's
mean,
great.
I hate long introduction. You got to do it. But Dominique McKoy, what is the To&Through project?
Yeah, well, first, Marcus, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on the show. So, To and Through, we are a small team based at the University of Chicago of educators, data analysts, and researchers. And our work is really building stronger college pathways for Chicago public school students. The way that we do that is through the lens of data. So we work with all parts of our system here in the city of Chicago, nonprofits, the district, educators themselves, our philanthropic community, to really make sure that everybody has access to high quality information, first and foremost, to help us understand how students are accessing college and the success that they are seeing in college, but also importantly, trying to make sure that we can keep a real critical eye on some of the opportunity gaps that still exist in the city, and making sure that we can kind of collectively work together to figure out how can we make sure that all students have a true opportunity to choose college. That's their chosen pathway for what they want to do after high school.
Yeah, but I always want to know, does the To&Through project, do you only focus on the quote unquote college bound students?
Yeah, so we do. And I think try to be really intentional about that. I think we are strong believers that not everybody needs to go to college, right? And I think we've been really excited to see that we live in a district in a city where we're actually starting to see, real pathways at scale for students to really access if they are not interested in choosing that college route. And we are still strong believers in the opportunities that college can provide to help students not only, I think, get access to careers that I think can provide some of that economic stability, but, personally, I also just still really deeply believe in college as just a developmental opportunity for young people, right? To discover a little bit more about what you're interested in, have some time in a hope more safe environment to make sure that you can discover some of your passions, learn about some of the careers and interests that maybe you didn't even know existed, right? I think college does a really good job of that. And I think in a lot of ways, draws from my own experience. I say a lot to folks that if I tried to explain my job today to 16-year-old me, he wouldn't believe me, right? I didn't even know that this was possible. And I think a lot of that was due to my college experience. That being said, we have to be really, really clear about some of the ways that college is just fundamentally not working for students right now. The number one barrier for students to be successful in college is finances, right? We understand that finding a college out of the 4,000 that are available to students can be a really complicated and stressful process, right? And so that is why we really try to do a lot of our work and support a lot of the work that's happening in the city to help make sure that we're not just saying kind of go to college and figure it out, right? But how can we be really strategic? How can we use data? How can we build systems to help students and families navigate that process with intentionality, find that right match college, that fit college that is affordable, and making sure that students are enrolling in places that they can be successful. And I think that is a whole bunch of work that we get an opportunity to do. But I think we feel it's really important.
I want to get back to that. Hopefully, I will before we're done. But Dominique McKoy, what does post-secondary success look like for the CPS students, Chicago Public School students that did not or do not, and they did not
Yeah,
attend a selective Roman school?
that's one of my favorite questions, Mark, and I'm really glad you asked it. So part of the work that we do is we track this information publicly, right? So we have a resource on our tool, on our website. It's called the To&Through Milestones tool. And it really actually does a great job of helping us ask some of these deeper questions like this, right? So I think a common misconception sometimes, right, is when it comes to college success for CPS students, that's only happening in a selective enrollment school. And that's not exactly true. So I'm going to give you a couple of numbers. We're going to try to I'm not going to try to throw a ton. We're going to try to stick to it just to kind of illustrate this point. So the last high school graduating class that we have data on to understand their college success is the class of 2017. So these are high school graduates in 2017. We usually give students 6 years to complete college, and then we kind of take a look at those outcomes. From that class of 2017, we had about 14,000 students who immediately enrolled in college directly after high school. From those 14,000, 6 years later, we had about 7,000, just a little under half, right, completed college with a degree or certificate within 6 years. Something we're really excited about, all-time high for Chicago Public School alumni. From those 7,000, a little over 2,000 came from selective enrollment high schools, right? So they are overrepresented in some of those students that did complete college. But I think it's really important to note, right, that that's about 30% of our college completers came from selective enrollment. We still have thousands of students coming from our neighborhood schools, charter schools, our citywide options. And I think, sometimes I think it really is important to note. I think sometimes this gets buried in all the conversations that we have around college in the city, is that there is, yes, a ton that we still got to fix, but there's also a ton of things that are really going right. And in a lot of ways, Chicago is continuing to emerge as a kind of bright spot for the nation, particularly when we think about the population that we're serving through Chicago Public Schools.
Like I said, when I had the show that day the other day, or last week, whenever it was, my son and daughter did not attend a selective enrollment school, but they gone and graduated in 4 years, matriculating, all that kind of good stuff. But what I learned was that, of course, there's a culture, depending on where you live and all that kind of stuff, what side of town you're on, or how much money their parents have. And we're not rich. If you know where I live, I ain't got, you said Mark ain't got no money. I know where he live. But the point is that if you're a first-generation student, my understanding, a lot of college students in Chicago, in the country, maybe almost half, are first-generation. You're at a huge disadvantage. And I think, I was a teenager 100 years ago. And, of course, when people tell you the cold, hard truth, it doesn't sound good. Because you may have a counselor or people that have gone through college, and they say, I don't think that's the right fit for you, or you're not really ready to leave home yet. Or, and people have been there, done it. They know it. But, you talk to a first generation. I don't blame them. I don't begrudge the families. But it's real. You don't have a freaking clue what the hell you're doing. Absolutely. I hate to be mean about it. You're nicer. Talk to me about that. The first generation students.
I think you are pointing out a really important piece of this work, right? Is that fundamentally, I think we also have to be really clear that for many college systems in the United States of America, they were not built for our young people, right? And so in a lot of ways, we have a lot of colleges that I truly do believe. They believe in diverse classes of students. They believe in trying to make sure that the education that they're providing is accessible to all students. And they're still institutions made up of people that are working to kind of undo some of that, sometimes hundreds of years of policies and practices that just fundamentally weren't built for first generation students, oftentimes students of color, and oftentimes students that are coming from low-income families that don't have as much experience with college. And so, I think one of the biggest differences I think we've seen in this district, which we're really excited about over the last, I would say 20 years, is that, you may remember this, you talk to folks. I didn't attend Chicago Public Schools, but you talk to folks, even 15, 20 years ago, and you ask, hey, what was the conversation that you had with your counselor about college? And they say, what conversation? It didn't happen. Right? We were really a system of, it was kind of, you really had to either know your counselor, or there was a lot of kind of subjective choices of who got to go and who didn't. And I think we've really tried, and there's been a lot of great work that's been led by practitioners and educators first and foremost, to really change that culture, to really start to say, hey, we do believe that there is a right fit college for every student if they want to choose this path, right? And that we're going to really try to make sure that we have a lot of opportunities for students to really, how do we break down that process, right? It's incredibly complicated. There's so many forms, there's so many things you got to do, right? But this is some of the pieces that, again, we can really use data for to kind of reel in some of that complexity, start to understand where our students going to have more likelihood of success than not, and try to really break down the process so that it is more manageable for students and families to really make sure that they're going through step by step and making sure we're accessing college with intentionality, with a plan that's going to be a lot more likely to help that student actually reach that ultimate goal of why they're going to college in the first place, right? To get that degree.
And I know when I post this, podcast episode on the social media, and it may have college in the, of course, in the description, they like, well, that's not for me because I'm not going to college. And I think people, I mean, and I understand how people feel. You know, it's about success. I don't care what post-secondary education success you're going to do.
Yes. Yes.
These ideas we talked about right now are going to get you there. Before we went on the air, we talked about you you were born and raised in Portland?
Yeah, I grew up in Portland, Oregon.
Oregon, right? Not Portland, Maine, right. Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, the real one.
And the real one. Ooh, it was round. I mean, okay. And so I say that because I had the pleasure of going to Portland twice. And now when I used to do speeches, this is me getting on my little soapbox. Hold on, people, I'm almost done. When I used to speak in the public schools, and before they got hip to me and ran me out and disbarred me from the public schools, I would tell the students, high school, and I would tell them, I said, please, try not to have children right away. If you have children, fine. Just delay having children, because I waited till I was 31 years old because I was too stupid to have children. I waited till I was 31. And so the point is, and also I said, please do some post-secondary education, whatever it is, because yours truly didn't do it. And and it cost me about, I made $2-3 million in lifetime earnings because I didn't do no post-secondary education. I know that now. I didn't know that then. And also I said, please travel. And people like, Mr. Sims, we travel. I said, no. When you get on a plane and you go, and you're 20 years old, whatever, and you are 21, you go to Las Vegas, you go to Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Vancouver, British Columbia, it's a different ballgame. You're going to stretch and grow. So I think that what I'm trying to say, the counselors, I know their burden is not enough of in some of these schools. Do they really demystify this thing called life and success and say, I got news for you. So a lot of these people in this damn school, you ain't going to think about 10 or 20 years from now, and they sure ain't going to think about you, but I'm going to demystify this success, and you're going to, whatever you do, you're going to be just fine, but you're going to have to follow these ideas I'm about to lay on you. What do you think, Doctor?
I mean, I think one of the most important things about this work, right? I think, again, college is going to be in the title of this podcast. I think a lot of folks are probably going to jump on with a real healthy skepticism, all right, around this system. And I think, one thing that I've learned in this work, I've been doing this work for about 14 years, since I moved to the city of Chicago. I think one of my favorite things about this is that it becomes really clear that this work is not just about making sure more students go to college. Right? It's about how do we create systems to help young people follow their dreams. And I think for us at the To&Through project, one thing that really keeps encouraging us to keep doing this work and make sure it's working better for more students that choose this pathway is, again, our students and families are still voting with their feet, right? 61% of our high school graduates, about 14,000 students a year are still choosing college, right? They are putting their interests and hopes in this pathway, right? And so I think that really, to me, is what it's about, is making it sure it works for more students that choose this pathway. And when I do work with colleges, one of the things, everybody's clear, right? Again, there's that healthy skepticism, which I think honestly is fair. I think we should be skeptical of college, right? And I think we're also really clear about the opportunities that it can provide. But I think one of my advice to institutions and folks doing this work is the best way to kind of build back, I think people's trust in college is to make it work for the students that choose it, right? And so, I think there has been a long relationship, particularly here in Chicago. I would argue, while we still have a lot of students that may be the first in their families to potentially maybe earn a degree through college, we have a lot of students that are not the first person in their family to interact with college systems, right? And that could go a lot of different ways, right? Data tells us, half of those folks may have finished, half of those folks may have not.
And they had a bad experience, or they thought they had a bad experience. They didn't, but they thought they did. Right.
And they were disappointed, right? And so I think that is really important for us to keep in the back of our minds here. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater with this opportunity, but this is going to require building that trust and helping make sure that students and families really see themselves in this pathway and see a pathway for it to be successful, and again, to connect them to what they really want to do in life.
All right. I got one quick question, and I'm going to have you close out the show with some inspiration or whatever you got to say. Okay, closing arguments, if you will. It's all good. This is fun. How does a student find a high school student that will eventually become, I don't care if they go to Chicago State or to one of the community colleges here in the city or in the suburbs. Yeah. But the point is that, because people think, the point is that how does that high school student and that college student, soon to be college student, find that one person, maybe that one person in that high school or in that college that they, because I know when you're young, some people are not aggressive, they scared, they don't feel, they don't fit in. They got all these white folks at this college, whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. And then how do you find that? How can they go out and find that one person, attract that one person? Because all it takes is that one person to say, hey, you got this. You can do this.
Yes.
Let's go.
Yes.
How do they find that person?
This work is about relationships, Mark, right? Fundamentally, no matter what kind of data we want to put in front of it all, this work is about relationships. And again, these are young people making one of the biggest transitions that they have made to date, right? And so I think that point of really finding those ways to make those connections are some of the most important things that can be helpful to make sure a student is able to, keep pushing and keep making their way through college. I think one thing that I find really encouraging as I've seen this work change over these last couple of years is that, majority of our students, CPS students, they're going in-state colleges. It's kind of the top 20 colleges and ones that we know. And I think I'm really excited and encouraged to see that those colleges are starting to invest in CPS students in different ways to make sure that there are things like, student affinity groups. If you are attending, we call them in this work, predominantly white institution or PWI, that sense of belonging sometimes can be really missing. It can be really helpful to find your people, right? And find folks that really maybe more identify with your experience. So I think seeking out those clubs, those student groups, but then also I think we're starting to also see more of a culture of that, to the best of our ability, that more individualized advising. Right? How do you have somebody, how are we building a culture of care and not just kind of survival of the fittest on our college campuses to really make sure that we are walking that journey alongside our students as well. So my biggest advice too.
Let me do this for you this closing advice and closing argument. First, let me thank you for being my guest on the podcast and go right ahead. Cause I just, people, if they take the time, some people don't have a lot of time, but man, if you take the time to connect with a person like Dominique McKoy, believe me, you're going to be successful. Go right ahead, Doctor.
I would just say, again, like I'm one of many folks in this city that are doing this work, and there are some phenomenal educators, counselors, and advisors that are putting in really sometimes just sweat and tears and time to really walk that journey alongside students. And so, again, my biggest advice to a CPS student that's entering into college, and you kind of nailed it, use your resources, right? We have, oftentimes there will be alumni counselors now that are reaching out to check in on you, see how you're doing. There are scholarship opportunities. There are job placement programs. There's a lot of folks that really want to help you be successful in this city. And so I think sometimes one of the biggest things is just kind of nailed it, right? Being open to those opportunities. Making sure you're checking your phone, making sure you're checking in with some of those relationships that you had in high school. Sometimes I hear from students, I didn't want to be a bother. I didn't want to bug this counselor again. I know they're busy. Let me just tell you, as an educator that's been doing this work, one of the best things in this work is to hear from your former students, even if it's a check-in, even if things aren't going well, right? And so I think just really trying to lean into those relationships. There are folks there on the other end, so all you got to do is reach out sometimes.